Most people believe violence comes from anger, or greed, or pure evil. We tell ourselves that crimes are loud, explosive things, born from rage, jealousy, revenge. But what if the most dangerous emotion isn't anger at all? What if it's loneliness? Not the kind you feel on a quiet Sunday afternoon, not boredom, not solitude by choice, but the slow, invisible loneliness that rewires the mind when no one is watching. The kind that doesn't scream, it whispers. This is the crime no one saw coming, because it didn't begin with hate. It began with being unseen. Loneliness is one of the few human experiences every culture understands, yet we rarely treat it as dangerous. Historically, we feared plagues, wars, and famine, but isolation has always been hiding in the background, quietly shaping human behavior. Ancient philosophers warned about it. Aristotle believed humans were social animals by nature, and that isolation stripped people of their humanity. Even prisons understood this long before modern psychology did. Solitary confinement wasn't just punishment, it was psychological erosion. Fast forward to the modern world. We're more connected than ever, yet more isolated than at any point in history. Messages replace conversations, screens replace faces, and silence stretches longer than it should. Psychologists call loneliness a subjective experience. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. And when that feeling persists, when it becomes chronic, it changes the brain. Studies show prolonged loneliness activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The mind begins to interpret the world as hostile. Trust erodes. Empathy dulls. The brain enters survival mode. That's when the story usually begins. In many true crime cases, investigators look for a trigger, a fight, a breakup, a financial collapse, something dramatic. But sometimes there is no obvious spark, just a long history of being ignored, rejected, forgotten. Take real-world cases where perpetrators were described as quiet, withdrawn, kept to themselves. Those phrases sound harmless, almost comforting, but beneath them often lies years of social exclusion, untreated depression, or emotional neglect. These individuals didn't suddenly snap, they slowly disappeared, mentally, long before the crime. Loneliness doesn't just make people sad, it distorts perception. The lonely mind begins to tell stories, stories about being wronged, about being invisible on purpose, about the world owing something back. Over time, these internal narratives harden into beliefs, and beliefs drive behavior. History offers unsettling examples. Many mass attackers, serial offenders, and violent criminals shared one common thread: profound social isolation. Not all lonely people become violent. Most don't. But when loneliness combines with resentment, mental illness, or a fragile sense of identity, one of the most chilling aspects is how invisible the process is. Friends drift away, family assumes distance is just a phase. Society often romanticizes independence and self-reliance, mistaking emotional withdrawal for strength. No alarms go off, no one intervenes, until it's too late. There's a psychological concept called thwarted belongingness. It describes the painful state of wanting connection but believing it's impossible. The person doesn't just feel lonely, they feel permanently excluded from humanity. At that point, moral boundaries begin to blur. The pain demands release. Some turn inward: depression, self-harm, suicide. Others turn outward. In interviews with violent offenders, a disturbing pattern emerges. Many describe feeling invisible before the crime and powerful during it. For the first time, they felt seen, heard, acknowledged, even if through fear. That doesn't excuse the act, but it explains the path.
This is why these crimes feel so shocking afterward. Neighbors say he was quiet. Coworkers say she kept to herself. Teachers say there were no warning signs, but silence was the warning sign.
Loneliness also erodes accountability. When you feel disconnected from others, their pain feels abstract. Psychologists call this dehumanization. It doesn't always look like hatred. Sometimes it looks like emptiness, a numbness where empathy used to be. In that state, harming others doesn't feel real until it is. Modern society unintentionally fuels this process. We celebrate hustle over connection, productivity over presence. We stigmatize mental health struggles, especially in men. We mock vulnerability. We tell people to deal with it or be strong. And then we act surprised when something breaks. The crime no one saw coming often wasn't invisible. We just didn't know how to read it. Loneliness doesn't announce itself dramatically. It shows up as withdrawal, as missed calls, as declining invitations, as someone slowly fading into the background. And because it's uncomfortable, we look away. There's a haunting truth here. Most violent crimes aren't committed by monsters. They're committed by humans whose inner worlds collapsed long before the act. That's what makes these stories so unsettling, because they force us to confront something close to home. How many people around us are quietly unraveling? This isn't about fear, it's about awareness, understanding that emotional isolation can be as dangerous as any weapon.